Hi, I'm Melanie Canastra. I'm a psychotherapist at My Therapy NYC. Today, we're going to be talking about the stages of breakup grief, how to mourn a breakup. Now, grief is often discussed through the mediums of experiencing a death of a loved one, and is generally a word or a term used within the context of the physical loss of someone. However, grief can also be broadened into the loss of loved ones through spiritual and emotional means, especially within romantic relationships and friendships. Now, we've all experienced breakups with partners, spouses, and friends. However, grief after a breakup isn't always recognized by the larger community of people. So, with this in mind, how do people normalize grief after a breakup when it is such a shared and collective experience? How do people adjust and heal from this loss of a person, and even the loss of yourself? How do we validate healing and mourn a breakup through the stages of grief? Breaking up with friends, romantic partners, or even family is very hard to do. The word breakup literally translates to in separation from a person or thing. So, why are breakups so difficult to experience? Well, when we separate from people that we love and care for, it can really feel painful and hurtful. Not only are you physically separating from this person, but there's also an emotional loss as well. Now, this can typically be seen through the process of experiencing positively associated emotions like joy or excitement, pleasure, happiness that you once shared with someone, and suddenly going towards negative associated emotions like sadness, pain, and fear. And this experience can be really jarring and just painful. So, the transition of experiencing positive emotions to negative emotions can be intense and even feel like physical pain. It's through this transition process that we can find ourselves within the stages of grief. The stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, while this is a framework developed to help us rationalize breakups and the grieving process, there are other ways to self affirm and validate your grief. Grieving includes not just grieving the loss of the other person, but also the loss of that part of yourself and that identity that you had. We cope with grief by allowing ourselves to transition through the stages of grief with self compassion. We feel our emotions, connect with others in our support networks, and be spiritually mindful of nurturing our sense of self. The stages of breakup grief is genuinely defined by the natural emotional response of suffering due to the loss of this loved one or thing. Processing breakup grief can come within two stages: the loss of the person and the loss of yourself. So when we experience breakups, it's natural to feel those negative emotions like sadness or even anger because of this loss. Either you're dealing with a partner leaving or being the person who broke off the relationship. Either way, this is still recognized as separating yourself from another person. You could have experienced a whole life with this person that you held so much love and hope for, and in a minute, this reality can shift. Within relationships, we feel a sense of alignment with others that just allow us to feel not only inner harmony, but also find community with other people. This integration of comfortability and happiness makes mourning a breakup all the more difficult because you find yourself in a place where you may not have that community anymore. Suddenly, you realize that you don't have this person or people to rely on and depend on, especially through such emotionally harrowing times. Just normalizing that there's a need and craving that you have for this person that is no longer being satiated. It can't be anymore. But this jumpstarts a mourning period for not just the other person, but also for yourself in that relationship. Some people who experience breakup grief can also experience a loss of the self. When we come from these relationships that can be quite enmeshed, or coming from a place that fostered such strong inner harmony, we can find ourselves in a position where we might not recognize the people that we are outside of that relationship. You might find yourself wondering who you are without this person, and even start mourning the person that you were within the relationship. There is a loss of identity involved that just adds another layer to the intensity of breakup grief. These two stages of breakup grief can be seen through the stages of grief created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The stages of grief starts with denial. You may find yourself saying things like, "This isn't happening to me," "I know it's not happening to me," or just completely rejecting the idea that the relationship that you had is over. You may believe that this person will be coming back, or you might be even going back to them. Then we have that stage of anger. So you might feel the need for revenge or feelings of rage that can emerge towards yourself or even towards the other person or people. You may start to resent this person for just disrupting that inner harmony that you have cultivated for yourself within that relationship. You may even start to resent yourself for the breakup even happening and start a cycle of just self-blaming. The next stage is bargaining. So at this stage, you might find yourself ruminating on, could have done this or I should have done that. I say this with all of my clients on spending time on coulda, woulda, shouldas that could have saved this relationship with yourself, could have saved this relationship with the other person, with other people. It's a period of time where you will start to think about, how can you salvage a relationship at that point of time? Or even salvage your loss of identity and try to regain this for yourself again. And usually at this stage of bargaining, it leads us to an outcome that doesn't typically work out for us at the end. That leads into stage of depression. Here you might experience intense and overwhelming feelings of sadness, isolation, feelings of hopelessness. You may even start to think that you're undeserving of any new relationships. It's through this stage that you might experience such cathartic emotions that jumpstart your own sense of healing. And this is normal. Allow yourself to come to terms with your grief on your own time and for as long as you need. And the last stage is acceptance. This stage is where you might show yourself some self-compassion and may even feel more courageousness for yourself and for other people. You might find clarity about your relationship with other people and, most importantly, the relationship that you have with yourself. It's a chance to recognize that you're on your way of repairing what you might have lost within yourself. And how else do we process breakup grief? Especially through the stages of grief, allow yourself to feel your emotions for however long you need. There is no timeline or guidebook on healing. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Allow self-compassion to come in, to be able to be kind and patient with yourself. This could look like words of self-affirmation. This could look like listening to uplifting music, or watching funny videos. Allow yourself to take the time needed to mourn after your breakup. Your feelings and healing are important, and they matter. Connect with others. Through a biological lens, we have a need for community. It's a part of us. We will always need and gravitate towards the desire for other people. By connecting with other people, our support systems will be able to foster the sense of belonging and assure ourselves that it's okay to have a need for other people. This is with the intentions of reducing any feelings of guilt or shame and any emotional isolation. And nurture yourself. Spiritual wellness is important in processing grief and affirming your experience. Have and believe in your own agency to ground yourself in your grief and within your own healing. Light a candle, go out in nature, read that book that's been sitting on that shelf. Foster the fact that even within your grief and mourning this relationship, we can also allow ourselves to feel excitement and happiness again. We can develop grounds for a new beginning. We all have different experiences in coping with breakups, and we should be able to reconnect with ourselves to find inner community. Self-nurturing allows you to strengthen your relationship with yourself and continuing to further your self-identity outside of that relationship. Grief manifests in many forms, and processing grief after a breakup is a very real and very valid process. When we go from emotionally positive states of being towards more negative states of being, we often can find ourselves becoming lost within our own internal processes, and this mourning process of grief can be intense and overwhelming, and that's okay. Allow yourself to understand the stages of grief and understand what it feels like in your body and even within your own self. Through taking our time and feeling our emotions and validating each stage, we'll be able to process not just the loss of this person or people, but also the loss of yourself. There is no set timeline for healing. Process your grief for as long as you have to. Be extra kind to yourself during this time, and allow yourself to connect with friends and family who are there to support you. Take this time to reconnect with yourself spiritually and emotionally towards wellness. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you would like to learn more, feel free to check out our website at mytherapynyc.com.